Renee Powell is one of a trailblazer among us. She is only the second woman to have played in the LPGA, and second African-American woman. And believe it or not, there are still only 8 African-American women who've been part of the LPGA. And so she is a trailblazer. But I will just say, we all have got a responsibility here to help Renee introduce the sport of golf to more people. Renee is the inaugural recipient of the Charlie Sifford Award, named for another trailblazer, African-American in golf. And I want you to hear a little bit more about Renee's story. And we can get to so many things about reinvention, because she has reinvented herself many times over her career so far and continues to do so. Why don't you start by just giving everybody a little background about how you started playing golf, a little bit about your father's influence, and kind of your early days in the sport.
I started playing golf. Actually, I still have my same golf club that I had when I was 3 years old. It's a little small for me. And the face of it is beat up a little bit, because as a 3-year-old, I hit rocks and stones and everything else, not just golf balls. But my dad fell in love with the game of golf when he was 9 years old. He grew up in a town where they were the only black family in the town. And he and a little friend were walking around and 5 miles down the road and discovered this open land. And he always said that he saw these people, these adults, and now imagine he was 9 years old. You know how 9-year-old kids are, like the little rascals. So he said he saw these adults, and they had these sticks and these balls, and they looked like they were trying to hit them to lose them, and then they were walking, not running, to try to find them, to hit them again, to lose them. And he was so fascinated by it, and he said that he said he was away, and by the time he got back home, it was dark. And he was the youngest in the family of 3 boys. My grandmother didn't know where he had been. And so he said he tried to sneak into the house. And he opened the door, and there was my grandmother. And my grandmother was one that, and I only got this one time, though, but she would send everybody out to get a willow switch. You know what a willow switch? It bends, you know.
It hurts.
Yeah. And
It stings.
He said he got the worst licking in his life, but he said he knew he was going to go back there the next day. And so he fell in love with the game of golf. Then he began to start caddying and playing golf at the same time. He then, fast forward, started the very first high school golf team they ever had in this little town, which is 10 miles down the road from where we are. And he became the top player, the #1 player. He became he would schedule the matches, and he was the coach for the team. And so he said after, as a teammate, he could play all over wherever they played. But after high school, wherever he went, they didn't want him because he wasn't part of the team, and he looked a little bit like me, or I looked like him. But he learned everything that he could about golf because he was so fascinated by it. And he worked at the little golf course, this golf course that he discovered, and as he got older. And so then many of you, my grandmother worked and sent his middle brother to Wilberforce University, which is an HBCU school. It's actually the oldest HBCU school in the country, and it's in Ohio. My dad started the very first golf team at Wilberforce that they ever had, and the first match played, now this is a bit of history for everybody, but the first golf match played between a historically black college and a white college in the United States was Wilberforce and Ohio Northern, and it was in 1937. And I only found out about that when my mom had passed away in 96. And so my dad and I just spent a lot of time together. And one night he was telling me about this. I'm like, what? So I called both universities, and I had them going through their archives. Wilberforce didn't know they had a team before. And so one of them found a little blurb, and another one of the in Ohio Northern, I think found a picture. And so we did a rematch. 65 years later, the presidents of the universities came, the parents came, and the students came, and it was like they were a part of history, and they were. The first two matches that were played, when my dad and my uncle played on the team, they won both matches. And so, as a turn of events, not to make Ohio Northern feel bad, when they came and they played at Clearview, of course my dad had built, they allowed they allowed Ohio Northern to win. But Ohio Northern won the match.
Very gracious of them.
Yes, it was.
Very gracious.
So after Wilberforce, my dad fast forward to World War II, okay, and he was sent to Scotland and England, and if any of you know that Scotland is known as the home of golf, it's where golf began. Now this was back in the 40s, and so at the time we had a black army and a white army. We had segregated armies, but fighting for the same war. But my dad was able to play golf on days off, and he would borrow clubs from the local members and the people there in Scotland and England, and also he borrowed clubs from the Red Cross. When he came back home, he found that things had not changed. And he thought, as a soldier, as a veteran of the war, that things would have changed, but he found out that they hadn't. And so I don't know how he did it. I don't know how he could have a mindset that he stuck with it for so long. And but my dad decided, he despised segregation and racism, and decided that what he would do is some way, because he wasn't welcome at the same area courses, again, when he came back home, was to some way find a way to build a golf course. How are you going to go and build a golf course with no money? You don't have the land yet. So he found a way and found this land. My mom lived in the city. My dad lived in the country, okay? And they would go past this area. And he saw this land, and he saw an article in the paper that it was for sale. So he went. He was trying to figure out how to buy this land. He taught 2 black doctors how to play golf, and they each put in a third money. But my dad didn't have his money, so he borrowed his money from my uncle. My uncle mortgaged his house in California to give my dad his share of the money. And they bought the first 78 acres of land, and he literally began building this golf course by hand back in 1946. And when he came out of World War II, you all probably heard of GI loans and GI bills. However, if you were not white, you couldn't get a GI bill or GI loan. It was only for white soldiers and white veterans. You couldn't even buy a house. So he literally had a hand seeder around his neck that he turned, and it spread the seed. And he literally walked back and forth every single step to seed the golf course. Well, first of all, it was a dairy farm that was no longer in operation, so you can understand, it's pastoral land out there. It was a lot of rocks, a lot of fences, and a lot of fence posts. And so he said, I thought I was going to find a rock picker, but I ended up being the rock picker. So he also felt that he wasn't building a golf course just for black people. He was building a golf course for everybody, because they didn't want women on the golf course back in those. They didn't want youth on the golf course, and they certainly didn't want black people on the golf course. But so his thing was to create an opportunity for everybody, regardless of the color of your skin, your hair, whatever you look like. And so he also felt that he needed to teach all of his family how to play the game of golf. That's how I began playing the game.
Renee, as it turns out, is this incredible golfer and is the second woman who is able to play as a professional, second African-American woman as a professional golfer. Talk a little bit about some of the challenges of being one of the only African-Americans professional golfers at the time.
Well, you have to remember, I played a long time ago on the LPGA Tour, but I played for 13 years. And there were a lot of things that were going on in our country at the time. And it was during the Vietnam War and all. So going to restaurants, oftentimes my roommate, who was Canadian, we would get up and leave because they wouldn't serve us. And they would serve everybody else around us. I know I've started to go into locker rooms, and they would stop me because my badge everybody else had wasn't as big as my face. Or else I remember we were out in Caldwell, Idaho at the Shirley Engelhorn, who was a great golfer, Shirley Engelhorn tournament. And so as I went to go into the hotel, they said, well, you can't stay here. And I'm like, why not? Well, we don't have your reservation. We don't have a reservation for you. However, they did. And so one of the great players, actually, another bit of trivia for you, is that the winningest golf professional in all of golf is not a male, it's a female. And her name is Kathy Whitworth. She's won more tournaments than anybody in history of golf, male or female, okay? So yay for the women.
Of course, it's a woman.
But somebody was in there when they were giving me a hard time, and they went out and got Kathy Whitworth and said, and she walked in and they said, Kathy said, what's the problem? And Kathy said, well, we either all walk or we all stay. So one of the things that with my peers, at least, they came to my defense at different times. It was too bad they had to do that because I was also competing against them. But it made one feel not so good. And the worst thing that really happened to me was just getting a lot of threat letters on my life for playing golf in my own country because I had gone to places where they had never had black people play before. My parents gave me a good, strong backbone. My mom was the sweetest person in the world. So, so I got a little bit of that from her, not as sweet as she was. And my dad tried to give me a backbone to say, when you get them 1 down, get them 2 down. When you get them 2 down, get them 3 down. So he taught me to be, both of them taught me to be strong. And I just felt that, we all stand on the shoulders of those who came before us. And so it wasn't a matter of giving up or stopping. I didn't know to do that. I just knew to continue on, and we all have to make a difference.
Well, obviously you have made a difference and you are continuing to make a difference. Once you retired from professional golf, talk about how you began to discover sort of what was next for you and begin reinventing yourself.
Well, everything I've done has really been in the world of golf, because golf isn't just a sport for me, but it's a way of life. And I went to college in Ohio. I went to Ohio University, to the Ohio State University. And so I knew a bit about our HBCU schools, but I had never been to any of them. So I decided that what was important, and I've always thought that golf is a sport that everybody should play. I don't know how many people in here play golf, but I will say to you that whether you like the sport or don't like the sport, you need to play it. As a woman, you need to play this sport. Right. So I set up and I went to the various colleges. I sort of got to figure out where they all were, and decided that I would go to these schools as people were getting ready to leave the academia world and go out into the real world. I wanted them to know that they needed to play the game, and that golf is something that's going to help them no matter what career they've gone into. And so I did that, and then at the same time I began going to Africa and to the continent of Africa, and I actually made 25 trips. The last one was to the country of Rwanda with Betsy King and Julie Inkster, who were a couple of the actually belonged to the World Golf Hall of Fame. And Betsy had started a program called Golf 4, F-O-R-E, Africa, and building water wells and things of that nature after she left the tour. And so I had lived in England for 7 years and knew the system, the British system, which was different from our system here in the U.S. when it comes to golf and whatnot. And I also knew that anywhere that the Brits were and the countries that they colonized, they were all, the Anglophone countries. Francophones, French were not big on golf. So I started this by, I went down to Washington, D.C., stayed with a friend of mine, and started going around on Connecticut Avenue. And I was so fascinated by all of the different embassies, right? And I'm like, oh, I think I'll go to that. Here's me. Oh, I like that embassy. I think I'll go to that country, and I think I'll go to that country. Well, anyway, what happened was that I then sort of did some things, and I did this, well, I think I'll go to Kenya, Zambia, and Zimbabwe first. Kenya, because everybody knows of Kenya. And then Zambia and Zimbabwe were right there, you know. And so I went into the Zambian embassy, and I walked in, and I said, oh, and there was this lady, Mrs. Mumika, and she was the receptionist, and she said, oh, I know who you are. And I'm like, oh, no, you don't. I've never been here before. She goes, no, you're Renee Powell. I'm like, how do you know who I am? Well, there had been a documentary that had been made on my life, and she had been also reading some old issues of Ebony magazine and knew who I was. So I said, does anybody else here play golf? And she said, yes, Mr. Tooby, who was shorter than me, and he was the first secretary. So he came down, and then he said, oh, you must come to my country, and you must come to my country. The president loves golf. So I said, oh, great. So in the meantime, I was going around to different places like Voice of America and to State Department and different places down in D.C. And they said, oh, Renee, you can't go to Zambia. I'm like, wait, why not? And they said, well, because we didn't have a good relationship. At the time, it was President Reagan was our president, and what happened was that the President Kaunda threw some of our people out, accused them of being CIA agents, and then as a show of force, President Reagan withdrew our ambassador. So I couldn't go. And but next year I did go, and I went to Zimbabwe that time. And so my thing was to take golf to the indigenous people of the continent. And so I did that, and one of the really lovely things was that I went to Zambia one day after they allowed me to go. And because they said, well, Renee Powell is the best person that we can send to Zambia because to strengthen that relationship. And I wasn't a diplomat, and the president loved golf. And one day, I went to Zambia, and the president had a golf course at State House. And I got over there, our ambassadors were always golfers, went over there with him, and this lady came running up to me, and she hugged me, and she started crying and crying. She said, because of you, not only have I met my president, but I am playing golf with my president. Wow. That's pretty cool.
You have started a foundation focused on women veterans and teaching them how to play golf. Why don't you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, we have a foundation at Clearview. It's called the Clearview Legacy Foundation for Education, Preservation, and Research. In 2001, it was placed on our course was placed on the National Register of Historic Places, and that was formed. But also, one of my friends at the PGA of America, because I'm also a PGA of America member, approached me, called me and said, Renee, women veterans, there are no golf programs for them. And the PGA has started a program called PGA Hope, Helping Our Patriots Everywhere. And so he said, and you should start it. And I said, okay. And so I said, initially, I said, well, who's going to pay for it? He goes, well, you've got to find the money yourself. I'm like, what? You're asking me to start a program and then I have to find the money myself? Do not call me and ask me to do anything else the rest of the year, I said to him. But then I decided I'd take up the challenge because not only was my dad a veteran, but I actually had the privilege and honor to go to Vietnam during the war and with USO in support of our troops. So the most rewarding trip I've ever made was to be able to go there to support our troops, okay? And it was so hard to get started because many women who were veterans and served in the military did not admit that they were veterans. And so because they didn't have confidence, and people would, and people would see them and they wouldn't think that they were veterans, so they just sort of downplayed everything. So we have this program. I have all 5 branches of service represented. There are 50 women on our roster. They don't come all the time, but we do a thing, but everything is totally free for them. So free golf, free equipment, free lessons, and we are year-round. So it's year-round cost-free program for our women military veterans that are mostly they're in the northeastern part of Ohio, so Cleveland, and I'm in Canton, where the Pro Football Hall of Fame is located, which just took place last week. God bless you. So it is, it's the most rewarding program I have ever done. Most of my women are dealing with PTSD. I've got a couple Purple Hearts, and I love this program because I can get back. Here we're sitting in lovely surroundings, and why are we sitting in lovely surroundings? Because of the people and the military who has helped to keep us safe and to keep us free. And oftentimes we forget about them. There are people still that are dying all over the world, you know. And then, and here in our own country, there are 22 veterans every day that are committing suicide. So my thing is being able to give back. I know golf. I can give back, give something to them that they never thought they could do. These women, none of them had played golf before, and so it's been very exciting to see them. And I remember when one of our women hit the ball and went up to the air, she goes, "That's so empowering," you know?
This woman has an amazing history and so many amazing stories to share, and she's writing a book. I imagine, yes, exactly, so stay tuned. And I imagine that book could be turned into a movie. And so if it does, which I think it will, who is going to play you and who's going to play your father?
Well, I think Denzel Washington should play my father.
Like that.
Because then I can meet him too, right? So I don't know. Who do you think should play me? Oh, Angela Bassett.
Awesome.
Yeah, not bad. Wow.
So awesome.
So hopefully that will happen, you know, sometime in the near future.
You've been recognized with the inaugural Charlie Sifford Award, and you knew Charlie, and he was a family friend. And so can you just talk a little bit about what this means to you? Again, you've gotten so many awards, but talk about why this one's special.
Well, you know, Charlie Sifford I first met him when I was like 12. And then the following year, actually, my dad liked to introduce me to all the people that have set the stage and the pioneers and everybody. And so I met Charlie Sifford when I was 12. And then his son is the same age. His one son is the same age as me. And so Charles Jr. and I have become really good friends. He lives in Ohio, too, so we talk often. But Charlie Sifford was the first African-American to break the color barrier in golf. Because up until 1961, the PGA unfortunately had a Caucasian-only clause. And so Charlie, with several other people, actually really took this to the higher levels and actually broke that barrier down. So when you see some of the things that he's done, you know, and just to play the game, and his book is called Just Let Me Play, you know. But over the years, we've continued to be friends. I remember we were honored. Charlie Sifford and Pete Brown and I were honored in Denver at an event called Legends Before Tiger. And then when my dad passed, Charlie was not well, and it was in the wintertime. Certainly didn't expect him to be there, and all of a sudden he showed up at the funeral on a walker. And about 4 or 5 years later, Charlie passed away, and I went to his funeral in Cleveland, and when I walked in, his family said, "Would you speak?" And I'm like, "Okay, if you want me to." Because trying to get in my mind what I was going to say, you know. But yeah, so to be the inaugural recipient of the Charlie Sifford Award, somebody who I really admired, who had done so much in breaking down barriers in golf, especially on the men's side. He had been a good friend of us, a good friend of the family, and I just felt absolutely honored to be the recipient of that award.
Well, I know Charlie and your dad and mom are looking down and cheering you on. Yeah. So I know they're very proud. All of us have had certainly challenges in our life, but I don't think any of us have had the challenges that Renee has had. And she has overcome them and turned them into, by her actions and with her perseverance and continuing to play and win and travel the globe, has shown us what it means to be a real trailblazer, somebody who cares more about others. As Renee and I were talking earlier, she said, when I said, how did you deal with some of this? And she said, it's not about me. It's about something bigger than me. And thank you very much for that example and being so wonderful and easy to talk to and fun to talk to.
Well, thank you. And to see a whole room full of women here is great. And I love the fact that I could wear golf clothes today.